All right, let's do this in one take. This is a response to The Start of a New World Order by Andrew Jick. A new world order is what's beginning to happen right now. He has a little bit of a back story talking about how the world is after World War II. Basically, the U.S. is in charge with the petrodollar and globalization. Each country has its niche. Each country, each sector, each state has its own niche, so why not lean on them to do what they do best? Until now, BRICS is what's coming out because of that. Or I don't know, maybe BRICS is happening because they're looking at U.S. going, wait a second, we can do that. We don't need the U.S. Moving on to the next, we have the dollar is becoming weak. And how do we divide power amongst who's now in charge? So who is in charge? We have BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. I didn't know much about State Street, but anyways, we as investors are empowering these three. And Larry Fink, he's the guy on top. Banks, the Federal Reserve, these are all the apex predators, what he called them. The asset managers, they're separate from banks, but they're competing together. The FIC, the Financial Industrial Complex. And then we have a second group of players. These are the sovereigns. These are the leaders. These are basically the leaders of countries with nukes. And they don't like the FIC because these countries are willing to collapse their economy in exchange for clean streets, order, rule of law. I mean, in some sense, I would like that. But, I mean, there are things in play here. We have the technologists. These are another group of people, including like Elon and all the guys that are going to create the systems, Microsoft, Bezos. And he breaks down how they want more power and how they're... We'll get to them in a second. We have the military-industrial complex, which is basically the CIA. And they don't answer to the government. They answer to financial... The FIC, which I don't really understand. Of course they answer to the government, but I guess what they're saying is the government's just a puppet to the FIC. And now what he talks about is tokenization, decimalization, and fractionalization. Saying that tokenization is taking an asset like a stock and putting it on the blockchain, which is still, it's so new, it's hard to wrap your head around it. But at this point, I think it's, especially because he's making this video, it's time that you do wrap your head around it. And fractionalization, I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's breaking these tokens into smaller pieces so that more people are able to own it. They're able to trade it faster and make it more liquid. And whoever controls the rails, what does that mean? Benefits. Whoever controls the rails benefits. And the AI will basically manage all of this. The bankers, the bankers want the same rule of law that is right now and what has been. They don't like the new privatization of money because they don't want to be cut out of capital flows. They don't want to be made irrelevant. So what they do now is they have the CBDC. Oh my God, CBDC. They want central bank digital currency.
Here's one of the central bankers at Davos saying exactly this.
As I am a central banker, let me insist a bit on at least I gave a speech 2 weeks ago with a triangle of threats and a triangle of answer, but let me sum up. The first threat is privatization of money.
So in other words, they want to not be what's called disintermediated, meaning they don't want to be cut out of the capital flows. They don't want to be made irrelevant. How do they do that?
Here the answer is CBDC.
Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. This is how the old system is trying to stay relevant. Because if cash is disappearing, if private payment rails are taking over, if tokenized assets are routing around them and asset managers are building this new infrastructure without the banks, well, that shrinks the power of the banks. So CBDCs are a way for the central banks to have their own programmable money. And banks have to be very careful here because if corporate CBDCs are allowed to exist, and if they pay an interest or a yield, that threatens banks' deposits. Banks don't want their deposit money leaving because their customers are buying corporate-issued digital currencies like Tesla coin that's going to pay them a 5% yearly interest on their savings instead of their savings account that's going to pay them 0.2% interest, right? That's an existential threat to the banking power. So just remember that the banks want CBDCs and control over what corporations can and can't do with them.
He talks about the crypto supporters and how they want to be able to compete with the banking lobby. They want to be able to hold your money, which will be crypto, and pay you interest based off of that. Asset manager, the most powerful. Banks the second, and the crypto guys the third. Based off of government law, government policies, the banks and the crypto guys might swap places. The sovereigns, they want to control all the resources of their region. They want to have control of their region. China, basically the Indo-Pacific, Russia, its sphere of influence in America, North America, actually North and South America. They will make the infrastructure. They want to be able to enforce the rules, but they're kind of at the mercy of a few of these guys. And then we have the military-industrial complex. They're basically the pawn of the FIC. And now what we're going to do is let's ask AI right here. Based off the New World Order that was talked about in Davos this year, how do I capitalize on it?
Here's a grounded synthesis of what the World Economic Forum, WEF, at Davos 2026 actually highlighted about a shifting world order and, crucially, how you can position yourself to capitalize on these macro shifts. Major Davos 2026 New World Order signals. Context for your strategy. RBC Davos 26. Making sense of a new world order 4 days ago. JP Morgan Davos 2026. 7 key takeaways yesterday. World Economic Forum 4 takeaways from Davos 2026. New deals. A reckoning. Dialogue and more questions than answers. 6 days ago. World Economic Forum Davos 2026. Special address by Mark Carney, PM of Canada 7 days ago. The Guardian: Young will suffer most when AI tsunami hits jobs, says head of IMF 6 days ago. Key takeaways shaping this new world order. Global geopolitical rules are being recast. Long-standing rules-based international order is widely seen as ineffective or ending, and nations are actively redefining strategic autonomy and alliances. Trade and supply patterns are volatile and fragmenting. Companies must build resilience and optionality into supply chains. AI and frontier technologies are not just buzzwords. They are the core engines reshaping productivity, labor markets, and economic power. Workforce transformation and reskilling are front and center as automation accelerates. Traditional governance and cooperation models are being rethought, with emphasis on dialogue but also decentralized standard setting. How to capitalize on these structural shifts below are pragmatic strategic pathways, ranked from broad structural bets to tactical plays, aligned with real trends WEF speakers and reports emphasized. 1. AI and frontier tech. Build or back the infrastructure, why it matters. Davos repeated a core message. AI is transforming economies, creating value comparable to previous foundational technologies, electricity, internet, and projected to add trillions in GDP by 2030. Concrete moves. Invest or start ventures in AI tooling that help other companies adopt and integrate AI, especially enterprise systems, automation workflows, and data governance. Focus on governance, safety, and compliance tooling. As fragmentation grows, companies will pay for frameworks that ease cross-border tech deployment. Invest in AI infrastructure beyond narrow applications, compute, data platforms, and decentralized models that reduce reliance on geopolitical choke points. Capitalization vectors: public or private equity in AI infrastructure providers. Consulting practices specializing in AI governance and regulation compliance. Enterprise SaaS that embeds AI into core operations. CRM, supply chain, HR2, supply chain resilience and optionality, why it matters. WEF and related reports argue that volatility in trade, tariffs, and geopolitics has shifted disruption from a shock to a permanent state, and resilience equals competitive advantage. Concrete moves. Launch or invest in supply chain analytics, blockchain, or real-time risk management platforms. Target nearshoring reshoring initiatives. Support companies shifting manufacturing closer to end markets. Provide services tools for multi-sourcing strategies so companies avoid single-point failures. Capitalization vectors: niche logistics tech firms. Data services that map geopolitical risk to supply flows. Software for import-export compliances regimes diverge. 3. Human capital and reskilling economy. Why it matters. Upskilling and worker adaptability were central Davos themes. The Reskilling Revolution initiative is scaling globally. Concrete moves. Start or invest in training platforms focusing on AI, cloud, cyber, and digital skills. Partner with universities and employers to build industry-ready curricula. Paid certifications. Deliver micro-credential stacks that map directly to industry demand. Capitalization vectors edtech platforms with enterprise government contracts. Partnerships with talent agencies and workforce development boards. Platforms monetizing verified credentials, e.g., blockchain badges for localized growth engines and city-driven innovation. Why it matters. Davos launched city-focused innovation networks. Yes, cities, indicating growth hubs will act as living laboratories and attract disproportionate capital flows. Concrete moves. Invest in real economy ventures rooted in urban innovation ecosystems. From smart infrastructure to biotech. Build local partnerships that tap into city-scale innovation networks. Target regional economic development programs that leverage tech clustering. Capitalization vectors real estate and infrastructure that supports innovation clusters. Urban analytics and IoT solutions. 5. Climate, energy, and blue economy infrastructure. Why it matters. Davos 2026 emphasized water and climate as economic infrastructure, not just environmental themes. Concrete moves. Invest in water technology, purification, distribution optimization, circular systems. Support companies decarbonizing energy systems or providing grid modernization tech. Carbon markets and nature-positive supply chain solutions. Capitalization vectors. Clean tech venture funds. Public-private partnerships in water energy infrastructure projects. What to avoid. Betting on speculative geopolitical conspiracy narratives. Capital flows respond to measurable policy, tech adoption, and institutional shifts. Businesses without defensible tech, ESG, or resilience advantages. Volatility will punish low-margin, high-risk sectors. Quick tactical checklist. Pushpin short term, 0-18 months. Align portfolio to AI infrastructure, supply chain risk tools, and workforce tech. Attend key industry events where Davos-level agendas are operationalized. ASEAN Tech Summits, AI governance forums. Develop or join cross-border pilots for AI governance and data sovereignty. Pushpin medium term, 1-5 years. Scale platforms that bridge skills x automation x productivity. Build intellectual property around decision support and scenario planning. Geoecon volatility. Pushpin long term, 5 years. Engage with public-private consortia on infrastructure and standards. Position to benefit from new standards and norms, not old consensus models. Final thought. The New World Order emerging from Davos 2026 is less about a single global command structure and more about decentralized power clusters, technological sovereignty, and resilience in a contested global landscape. Capitalizing means moving from reactive to proactive, building infrastructure, tech, human, and physical, that thrives amid uncertainty. If you want, I can tailor this into an investment strategy deck or a business plan outline based on your sector or risk appetite. Just let me know your focus.